So today I'd like to maybe leave you with 5 things that have helped me in my career. Um, and my guess is you'll go, I know that, I've done that, it works for me. And that'll work for me too, because it's a validation that we're all on the right track. But I'd also like to save a lot of time for questions because I like dialogues better than just hearing myself talk. So here we go. Number one, um, of things that work for me, I call it going to the deck plates. Um, you have to know what your people are doing. I learned this lesson in my second year at the Navy, or actually at the end of my first year when I was on plebe cruise. For those of you that didn't go to Navy, it's where you go out for the summer on a ship and you do the work of the enlisted folks that are assigned to the ship. With the theory is that if you're going to lead them, you better know what they do. And
what department were you assigned to, Admiral?
Huh?
What
What's
department
that?
were you assigned to?
Well, I'm going to tell a story about that. I was assigned to the deck department.
All right.
And I was paired up with this 17-year-old seaman. And our job was to clean the midship head every day. And I remember my first day with him, I said, well, how do we do this? He goes, well, let me tell you. First thing we do is we put up a sign that said, the head is closed for cleaning between 9 and 10:30. And then we go into the head and we lock the door. Got it. Well, we cleaned the head and it took us about 30 minutes. It's closed for an hour and a half. And I said, well, what do we do for the next hour? And he goes, well, here's what we do. We lie down here underneath the urinal and we take a nap and we go to sleep. And then we'll get up at 10:30 and we'll take the sign down and open up the head again. Well, that lesson went with me that if you're leading people, you better know what they do, because his leadership had no idea how long it took him to perform that task. And he took advantage of it. So fast forward, I remember when I left the Navy and I became the CEO of Navy Federal, the first question I asked myself was, how am I going to prove to these people, most of which have not been in the military, that I care about them and that I have their best interests at heart? And so I said, well, I'm going to go to the deck plates. And when I took over, I spent a lot of time just walking around the headquarters, and I would stop at someone's desk and just sit down and introduce myself and say, tell me about what you do. Tell me about how I can make your work better to make your task easier. And you would be amazed at the reaction that brought. And all of them would ask, well, what do you want us to call you? By what name? And I go, I want you to call me Cutler. They all knew I was a retired admiral, and they had no idea what these military people were like. And the best thing that we can all do is put them at ease of who we are. Because as you know, or as I like to say, if you're a commanding officer of a ship and that crew believes that you care about them and have their best interests at heart, they will do wonderful things for you. They'll do remarkable things. And you may have to ask them to do some very hard things. But if they think that you really care about them, they're going to do that. But if you think you're there, if they think that you're just there to further your own career and feather your own nest, now they're going to not be quite as enthusiastic about what they do for you. So go into the deck plates. And then another thing that worked for me when I was on the deck plates at Navy Federal, I would tell employees, ask me questions. I will tell you everything I know. I will keep no secrets from you. And by the way, that really worked during the recession when things were difficult and things were hard. I would invite them to ask me anything they wanted. Now, it used to drive HR crazy that I would say to them, you know, I'm going to tell you everything I know, and it's sensitive. And if you tell anybody outside of Navy Federal, I might have to kill you. But I never really meant that. HR told me that I couldn't do that anymore, but I couldn't help myself. And as Taylor said to you, Navy Federal in 87 years now has never had a layoff. And you would be surprised what that means to people that have been laid off in their work. And I also used to tell them, we may modernize, we may do things, but we will retrain you to do work that is meaningful. We're not going to let you go. And that loyalty goes two ways. I want you to be loyal to Navy Federal, but in return, I've got to be loyal to you. And that really works. And I also think that in going to deck plates, I call it, don't fall into the trap of retreating to the cabin. Now, what do I mean by that? I remember when I was CO of a cruiser, it was near the end of my tour. I'm crawling around underneath number 3 generator to take a look at what's going on down there. And I'm saying to myself, dang, this is hard work. I'm getting a little older and it's hard going down under there. And then the good parent on my left side said, you got to do it. You got to do it because there are people that you've never met before. There are people that are working down in that space that have never seen you. But how many of you have seen people that once they get comfortable in a job or a position, they retreat to their office and they never get out and about? And you've got to keep reminding yourself, I need to get out there. They need to see me. And then the last thing about going to deck plates that I'd like to share with you is about listening. I'm sure that we can all say with great confidence that you only learn things by listening. And when you're talking, you don't learn anything. But the longer also you're in a position, the longer you have a tendency that you want to share your wisdom to your team. And that requires you to talk. So I think you need to strike a balance between listening and talking. And I caught myself at Navy Federal doing that because you're not learning when you're talking. So you got to have the right balance. Second thing, and I'm going to move a little quicker here, is you need to create a safe harbor wherever you are. And I tried to do this both in the Navy and at Navy Federal. And what I mean by that, really, it's pretty simple. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't take your bad day out on someone else. Because if you do, you're not going to learn things. I was on a sea of a cruiser one time, and we were doing, it was the Princeton, and it had been damaged by mines during the Persian Gulf. And I was not there then, but I took it up when it got repaired, and we were out to prove that our missile systems worked, and we were back combat ready. And we had a series of 5 targets that were going to come over our ship that day that we were to shoot down. And the first one, we were all prepared and ready to go. And I gave the command for batteries release. And nothing happened. And the missile did not leave the tube. And then I hear the roar of the target going over the ship, which was a very bad thing. And so I called together the team. We went to the wardroom and I said, let's talk about what happened. And as I was walking down the wardroom, I'm thinking, well, how am I going to behave in there? Am I going to go ballistic because we failed on our first missile shoot? Or am I going to go in there and try to find out what happened? Well, I took the latter approach, and I sat down and I said, look, we got to figure out what happened here because we've got 4 more targets today. And but we can't go forward if we don't know why we failed. And at the end of the table, this third-class petty officer poked around and got my attention and raised his hand. And he said, "Captain, I had my fire switch in the wrong position." I said, "Great, we've found out what happened. Will you have it in the proper position next time?" He said, "Yes, sir, I will." And we had direct hits on the next 4 targets. But I often wondered if I'd have gone in there like a crazy man, or in today's world, I'm sorry to say, that we got to hold someone accountable and punish them. That third-class petty officer may not have raised his hand, and we'd never known, and we'd have been chasing our tail. So that was a lesson for me. And then the lesson I learned at Navy Federal, I had a chief financial officer named Lauren Lloyd. I love that lady. And I told her early on, I said, "Look, I'm going to celebrate you as the CFO when you bring me good numbers, but also if you bring me bad numbers, because we can't deal with it if we don't know what it is." And we did that. And when she retired, she gave me one of the nicest presents I ever got. It was a little plaque from her, from the CFO, that said, "It is what it is." And that was her way of telling me that I made her job much more enjoyable and actually easy when I told her we would celebrate the good work that she did, whether it brought us good numbers or bad numbers. Now, fortunately for Navy Federal, we had very few bad numbers. But I always remember that lesson. Number 3, for all of you ring knockers out there, the Navy has this tradition of UNODIR, unless otherwise directed. And that was brought about when the Navy worked at great distances, and sometimes messages took days to respond to. And Admiral Dewey sent a UNODIR message from Manila Harbor one time that said, "Unless otherwise directed, I'm going to take control of Manila Bay." And by the time he got the answer back to do that, he had already taken control of Manila Bay. I think we all should think about our UNODIRs and not be asking for permission for every little thing. And I call it UNODIR. And perhaps that young lady that sent the flowers was an extension of UNODIR. She did what she thought was right, and it was right. And that's another story I'll tell you another day. Number 4 is you got to look past the lifelines. And what does that mean? Someone in your organization has to be looking out beyond the everyday hubbub of just making the trains run on time. And they got to see what the weather's like beyond the lifelines, what the conditions are like, and try to steer the ship in the best possible passage. And sometimes you're the only one that's doing that. And people depend on you. And all of you that are on this call today can think about experiences in your own lives where you're the one that's looking out beyond the lifelines. And then also for my fellow ring knockers that are not Navy guys, there's a famous quote from John Paul Jones that he said, "He who does not risk cannot win." He who does not risk cannot win. Think about that. All of us have to take risk. And how many of us know people and organizations that don't want to take risk? They'll avoid risk at every opportunity, and many of them are not around anymore. And when you take risks, you make a calculated estimate of the situation, the risk reward, and make the best decision that you can. But you will never have perfect information. Never have perfect information. There was a study by the Harvard Business School a number of years ago that said CEOs that were willing to make decisions had a longer tenure than those that were not. Think about that. I remember one of the decisions that we made at Navy Federal was about expansion of our Pensacola campus. I went to my number 2 guy at the time, who was a Naval Academy graduate, and said, what do you think about expanding the campus in Pensacola? And he goes, well, we'll have to study that for about 2 years to arrive at the right decision. And I said, no, I'm making the decision right now. We're going to expand it. Fortunately, he was only with me for a little while longer before he decided to retire. Number 5, and the last one. And Taylor helped me with this one tremendously. You've got to guide by your North Star. What are the principles that you hold nearest and dearest? And you should always have those as your North Star in good times and in tough times. For me, there were 3 things. It was 1, take care of your people and they will take care of you. 2, empower your people. That lady that gave away the flowers actually had a little budget to do nice things for people. And we told her, or that people like her, you choose what you do. You're empowered to do that. Just do what you think, and this is my number 3 principle. You do what you think is the right thing. And one of the happiest days of my life was when I was leaving Navy Federal. People said to me, Cutler, we're going to remember you because you said to us when anything ever came up about the business, you said, we're going to do the right thing. And that worked for me.